On this album, we've been talking about a lot of issues, you know what I'm saying? Issues. But the root to all these issues, bottom line, is sin. It's sin. So on this track, we're going to deal with that. Now in verse number 1, I'm going to explain what sin is, what it is. Verse number 2, I'm going to tell you what sin do, what it do. And verse number 3, I'm going to explain how to be dying to sin, how to defeat it. Let's go. Sin, for instance, is this. It's deception,
choices. What led up to the bad choices, you know, my story is comparable to a lot of people's story. Divorced parents, and some guys, the mom keeps all the kids. In my case, my father kept all the kids. Some cases, when a mother keeps all the kids are, especially the guys, are mad at their dad. In my case, I was mad at my mom. And I allowed that anger and that frustration and just to build up on the inside of me until it just began to explode. When it began to explode, it began to explode in ways that were not, shall we say, conducive for a healthy community or a healthy me. Got involved in gangs. I got stabbed, run over by a car when I was young. Just a lot of crazy things began to happen, and I got out of control. And institutions are all about guys getting out of control. So I got out of control and got into drugs and just all kind of crazy stuff. And I started making some pretty crazy decisions.
Okay, so you said it was just you had a lot of anger towards your mom.
I did.
How would you outlet that?
Well, first of all, I outlet it. Let me tell you what I found out with drugs. I never liked drugs, even though I took a lot of drugs and sold a lot of drugs. I never liked drugs. I started using drugs. In fact, I started off sniffing glue, paint, and all kind of crazy stuff. What I found out is when I was high, I didn't concern myself with the present. I didn't concern myself with the pain I was causing anybody else. I didn't concern myself with the pain that I felt, and so I stayed high.
So that helped suppress your conscience.
That's all it did.
A lot of the things that you were doing, and I guess that goes along with a lot of the gang members.
It suppressed the conscience, it suppressed my actions, and I became numb. I became numb to everything around me except my own pain. I didn't care about the pain I caused you or anybody else. I just wrote everybody off. It was all about me at that point. You know, when I realized that pain could be inflicted on somebody and what pain felt like, I decided I was going to be the one inflicting pain rather than the one receiving the pain.
So what was the environment like that you grew up in? Give us a little description.
Well, I grew up in the country, man. You know, Daddy had a little farm out in the country. We raised pigs, chickens, and and all that kind of stuff. I was actually born in Los Angeles. We left when I was young because my father said if we didn't leave L.A., I was going to probably get involved, or he didn't want his boys getting involved in gangs, getting in trouble, going to prison. So I moved to the country. And
how old were you?
I was about 4 when we left L.A.
Right.
So we moved to the country, and I got involved in drugs and gangs and went to prison. But it was a pretty small town, about 3,000 people. But when you're troubled, trouble will follow you everywhere. And I was about 8 when Mom left. My older brother was 9, and my baby sister was I think about 2. And my grandmother eventually she came and helped my father live with us to help my dad raise us.
Well, take me to that first encounter that you had with the criminal lifestyle. I mean, was it a friend of yours, that somebody that befriended you?
No, my first encounter with the law was my brother and I were walking down the street, and there was this car that was dusty, and we wrote our names all over the car. And so the police came to our house that night because when you write your names on a dirty or dusty car, it scratches the paint. Mm. Now, had we known that, we'd have wrote down Ricky, Steve, George, or something else. But, we didn't know. We were kids. And so they came to the house, and I remember my brother was crying. He was sobbing when he saw the cops. And I can still remember, I just stood there looking at him. And they were trying to scare us. They had the owner of the car that was there, and Daddy was there. And they looked at me and said, "What about you? You're just as guilty as your brother is." I said, "Well, I'm sorry I did that too, man. I don't want to go anywhere, But I wasn't that emotional, and I wasn't that scared. And I was just a young, I probably was about maybe 10 years old or what have you at the time, maybe 11, maybe.
So you think that was because you had a lot of coldness in your heart?
It was getting cold. As I look back, I realized, my mom came home at one point and left, and we cried and tried to beg her to stay, and that didn't work. And I remember going out into a field, and I cried, and I said, "No one's ever going to hurt me like that again." Mm. And I can take you to the spot where my heart just got cold. And I just totally began to change.
So what type of beliefs were formulated at that point when you said nobody's gonna hurt me again? So
Well, number one, my dad took us to church. So number one, God was out the picture.
okay.
I said, don't tell me about a God who can do all these wonderful things and he can't even keep my mom and dad together. So my belief system was I mean, yeah, I still went to church a little bit because I was at home with my dad until I was 13 when I left. But, I just said, there's no God. Don't talk to me about God. I don't want to hear about God. So it was just, I don't know what you would call me at the time, but I just was cold and calloused.
Okay, what about towards women, like female teachers?
Well,
How
you know
was your
what?
response towards them?
Up until the time that happened, my mom and dad used to tell me that I used to bring home notes from the teachers, and they would talk about what a good guy I was, and they hated to transfer me from one grade to the next. I was a really good kid, but after that, I just changed, and I think I was always somewhat respectful to women, but it came out later when I got married.
Okay,
So,
got you. So now take us to that, to high school. The high school years when you got really started escalating.
well, actually, junior high.
Junior high, okay.
Junior high school, I was walking home from school one day, right, and something inside of me, I felt like God wanted to do something great in my life, but I didn't know it was God. It was just like I felt like there was greatness on my life. That's the only way I can describe it. And again, I can take you to the spot when I was walking home from school. I just felt like there was a big plan for my life. And, my teachers were very positive. They knew the pain we were going through at our home, little town. Everybody knew. So they were always encouraging me and all. I didn't want to hear it. I just didn't want to hear it. I wanted my mom back home. I want life to be the way I wanted it to be, not the way it was. And I couldn't change it, so I just decided to change everything around me. And so by junior high school, it just started seeping out, man. And when that poison started coming out, it didn't stop till I was locked up in prison. And what happened was this. I didn't just wake up in prison one day. You don't just wake up in trouble. If this was me right here and making choices, reading good books, hanging out with the right crowd, listening to good music, going to the right places, if these were the decisions, going to my right would have helped me to be a really better teen, I made these other decisions. Hung around with a different crowd. Started smoking weed, sniffing glue, all the drinking, alcohol, coming home late, being rebellious, hanging out with gangs and all the rest. So when I woke up in prison, it didn't just happen. There was a series of choices that I made to get me here. Just like if I'd have made different choices, they would have taken me a totally different route.
So what did the junior high scene look like? You were on through the hall.
I started fighting a lot.
Okay, you started fighting.
I started because by that time, I was getting a little big, and you couldn't say nothing to me, man. I mean, if I didn't like you, we just fought. So I was getting in a lot of trouble at school, and it was because of my temper. It was because of my anger, and I didn't want to control it. I just let it get totally out of control.
Okay, so take us to the crime scene.
Well, then in high school, I started packing knives, started packing guns, and selling all kind of crazy stuff. And so one night, me and two other guys, one of them was a relative, my cousin, we all got high on drugs. We were at a party, ran out of booze, and we decided to go to this liquor store and rob this liquor store. And I had a weapon, gave it to my cousin. And then as we walked into the store, I realized, man, this is crazy. What are we doing? And my grandpa was a deputy sheriff in town, in the county. And so I told my relative, don't do it, man. Don't do it, man. Don't. He said, all right. But what I didn't know was he was high on crystals. I mean, he was in another zone, but I didn't know this. Right. And so though he said, okay, he didn't mean that. So when we got to alcohol, because I could buy alcohol, they thought I was older than I was in this particular liquor store. And the guy, he was most of the time, he'd been drinking as well, so he didn't really check on our ID cards. Besides, there was a big air base around where I lived, so they just figured we were one of the military guys. And when I turned to walk out, later my cousin said he thought it was a snake trying to bite him. And he stabbed the guy, and before the night was over, the guy died. I was 17 years old, my cousin was 23, and there was another guy that was 19.
Okay, so what happened after that scene? When he did that, what happened from there?
We ran out of there. There was another guy in the car. We ran out and got in the car. We went back to the party. 3, 4, 5 hours later, police came to the party. They arrested me, arrested my cousin, because somebody had saw us. They went to the next city, told the cops what they saw. The cops came and got us while they were interviewing me. One of the guards came in, one of the police came in, whispered to the captain's ear. Captain looked at me. It's no longer attempted murder. The guy died on the operating table. I reached for a garbage can, got sick, started puking. I started crying. I said, man, the guy died. Because up until that point, it was all a fall because I was so high. I just stayed high. I was on LSD, mescaline, weed, whatever I could get, red devil, whatever I could get to leave the present world. That's all I did. I just would stay high. And so, but when he said that,
right,
it hit me. My God,
sobered up.
And I knew then, because any other time I could talk my way out of it or blame somebody, and you know, my family had a good name, and so I knew that I'd go home. But when he said that, I knew I wasn't going home.
So what's going through your head? What are some of the thoughts that are going through your head?
Well, number one, I was scared. I was going, man, I cannot believe I've allowed my life to get this far out of control. You know, and so, you know, when I hear young guys that have done some crazy crimes, and you know, we all want to pretend like we're tougher than we are and all the rest, it hit me. It really, I just realized, man, my life was totally out of control, and I didn't know where this thing was going to go. I didn't know how much time I was going to get. I didn't know anything. You know, it took me probably a week just to sober up with all the drugs and stuff in my system.
So what are the conversations with you and your father like at that point? You know, he's coming to visit you.
My dad came to the county jail, and he looked at me on the other side of that glass. He picked up the phone. He looked at me, and I hadn't lived with my dad in about 4 years. And he said, son, we're in trouble. I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to make it. And it was in that moment, Ray, that I realized there was a God. It wasn't when I was going to church and hearing all the sermons from the preachers, but it was when my dad was on the other side of that glass, because I had stole from him, lied, cheated, disgraced his name. And in that moment, I realized that the only way any human being could respond the way that Daddy did was if there was a God. And I knew there was a God. I didn't reach out to him in that moment. He was a great
witness.
He was. I didn't reach out to God in that moment, but I remember the first thought was, there was a God, and he looked at me, and he tried to smile, but I could see the hurt in my father's face. And for the first time in my life, I came to grips with who I was and what I had become.
Okay, so the next day, what are you doing? You wake up in your cell.
You know, wake up in my cell, man, and it's just, I'm not even quite sure, because of the nature of the crime. They didn't take me to juvenile hall, so now I'm 17 years old. I'm in county jail. I'm facing a murder, first-degree murder conviction, and you know, I'm scared. I was just really scared. But you don't show that you're scared. I mean, and because I was 17, they had me in a cell by myself, and then this kept going on, trying to make plea bargains and all this, and eventually, you know, I made a plea bargain. I got sentenced to 5 years to life. And I went to prison, went to vacuum.
So you get sentenced to 5 years of life. What's going through your head at that point?
I remember my probation officer. He came, and he came to my cell, and I was sitting on the top bunk, had my feet on the bars, still in the cell by myself. And he started crying. He said, "You could have been this, and you could have been this, and you know, you're one of the best guys I ever had on my probation. You know, whatever you want to, the guys that he had to work with." And I remember looking at him, I looked him right in the eye, and he goes, "You're going to do at least 7 years." And I remember looking at him saying, and I said these words to him, called him by his name. I said, number one, I ain't doing 7 years. I said, I'm not going to escape, but I ain't doing 7 years. And then I looked at him and I said, and I'm still going to be somebody. And I didn't know what that meant. I just knew there was something inside of me that maybe it was the way my father raised me, and the things that he said, the words he spoke over me, but I looked him right in, and he quit crying. And I looked back and I realized he believed me. Now, I'm not quite sure I even believed it, but I wasn't ready to give up on myself.
Some faith welled up.
Came from somewhere. But I just realized.
Were you reading the Bible after that?
No.
Not yet. Okay.
What happened was, backing up, when I was 16 years old in juvenile hall, I did a bunch of Bible studies, and I gave my dad a Bible. Let me grab this Bible. And in fact, that's a picture of my dad. There's my dad. He passed away a year and a half or so. It's my dad. Me and my dad when I was young. Me and my dad as an older adult. And he really he's my hero. He was my hero. And he still is in many ways. But I was in juvenile hall, Ray, and I did these Bible studies, and they gave me this Bible, this very Bible. And when I got out, because I was locked up on my dad's birthday, I said, "Daddy, I got a gift for you." And it was still in the box. He said, what is it? I said, well, open it up. So he opens it up, and I was probably high when I gave it to him. And he opens it up and goes, man, son, that's a nice Bible. Look at that. King James. And, boy, that's a nice Bible. I said, well, yeah, Dad, happy belated birthday. He said, well, I'm going to save it. I said, save it for what? He said, I'm going to save it for you. He said, you're going to preach out of this Bible one day. And I remember looking at him, smile and going, yeah, I hear you. And I walked off. And so when I got to jail, one of the only books they let anybody send you in jail was the Bible. So all of a sudden, I get this Bible back. And then I found out it's the only book you could take with you when you went from jail to prison. So I take this Bible with me. And what I started doing, Ray, if you in the back, what I started doing was writing down the names. I'd meet guys in prison, and I'd write down their names because they were good dope connections. Man, when I get out, I need to know all these guys. So I started using this Bible since I could take it. And you could see here, I had a whole directory going here, brother. And most of these people here, man, were involved in drugs and everything else. And I wanted to make sure I didn't lose my future contacts. And here's another page. I wasn't taking Bible notes. I was just, all these were notes. And so all of a sudden, I started reading it. I had an aunt.
So what did you start with? You start from the beginning?
You know what? I don't even know, man. I just started reading my Bible, man, and I couldn't understand all the stuff I was reading. But this was after sitting on the yard one night going, you know what, God, I don't believe you exist. I'm tired. But if you do exist, I'm a candidate. Man, I had more Playboy books in my room. I had all kind of crazy books. I got involved with the Muslim brothers. I got involved with Mao Tse-tung. I mean, I was getting involved with some crazy stuff. But I knew about God. I was raised in church. I was baptized when I was 8 years old, but I didn't want to deal with God. There has to be another way, man. But I had no peace inside of me. See, the one thing I know, Ray, if a guy's out drinking, drugging, gangbanging, and all the rest, I don't care what he appears on the outside, he has no peace on the inside. And on the inside of me, Ray, I had no peace. Well, I fronted on the outside. In fact, when I was in DVI down in Tracy, I had the best dope connection in the whole prison, man. That's a story in and of itself. And but I still had no peace.
So the drugs would just give you temporary
relief, at best. And I remember and my grandfather died when I was in DVI, and for whatever the reason, I think miracle of miracles, and this was back in 1977, I was allowed to go to his funeral. No, 1973. And I went to my grandfather's funeral. For the first time in my life, I looked down at him. And I told my grandfather that who I was. I mean, I didn't tell him who I was, but I said, Daddy Bryce, you're dead, you're gone, and I almost destroyed your name. But I'm going to make a promise to you. I am going to change your name, and I'm going to make it good again. And I made a promise to my grandfather at his funeral. And I went over and I looked at my dad, and I'll never forget that day. He was crying, and man, there was nothing I could do. I mean, I had to go back to prison. But I remember looking at my dad, and what I've come to realize in life, that there's very few times in life that really your parents need you. One of them is when their parents die. And when my father died, and my dad, our family is a real hugging, emotional, close family, and they would hug my grandfather, kiss my grandfather. And, my dad, all he did was cry through the whole service, and I couldn't help him. And so I went back to prison. I snuck some weed back in, but I couldn't get high anymore. It just wasn't the same, Ray. It wasn't the same. I gave the weed away. Got transferred to another institution. And a friend of mine asked me to go to church with him, and I said, I don't go to church for punks and sissies. I don't go to church. And he kept begging me. And, I was on the weight pile working out, and I had weights in the prisons then. And finally, he just would leave me alone. So I got up and went to chapel with him. I hadn't been to chapel in years. And I went to chapel with him. And I told him afterwards, I'm going back one day. I said, I'm going to go back with you next Sunday. He said, why? I said, man, the chaplain's wife, man. I said, look at the chaplain's wife. I said, besides, make my dad feel better if he knew I was going to church. And between that Sunday and the next Sunday, I sat on the prison yard and I said, God, I don't believe you exist. But if you do, I'm a candidate for whatever you have to offer. I just need some peace on the inside. For a year and a half, Ray, every night I heard this man beg, don't stab me again, don't stab me again. I'd wake up in my cell just sweating profusely, man. I'd be soaking wet with sweat. And I would just sit on the side of my bed. At the time, they allowed us to have razor blades to shave with. They don't do that anymore either. And I would sit there with a razor blade in my hand thinking, you know what, I can't deal with this, man. I need to end this. I just need to end this. 17 years old in prison. I don't know if I ever get out. You know, in light of what I said at the county jail, now it's reality. Yeah, I'm in prison, man. You know, it's crazy. It's mad. I've never been in a place like this in my life. But I found out this is where they send people who are out of control, and I was out of control.
And take us to the first day that you entered the prison. You're 17. How was that?
When you get to DVI back then, East Block, West Block, these are like 3-story high cell blocks. And here's control building was right here. So I'm standing here, they're giving me my blankets, some other stuff, and I'm standing here, and in between these cell blocks is this cemented area where guys are playing basketball, dominoes, all kind of stuff, exercising. And I don't know what the look was on my face. But the first thought went through my mind as I stood there was, this is not a career move. This is not a career move. And I heard a voice, one of the guards inside the control unit, he says, it's too late to be scared. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, whatever that look is on my face, I got to change it. And I changed that look on my face. They hit a button, the gate popped open. I walked inside, walked over the West Block, showed me my cell and what have you, ate dinner, lunch, or what, I ate. And then that night I went to bed, and I had a dream. And so I'm dreaming, man. I don't know what the dream was about, but I'm dreaming. And I know that when I wake up, I'm going to be home. Mm. And when I woke up, I put my feet on the side of the bed. I still hadn't woke up really quite yet. And my feet hit that cement floor. And it woke me right up, and I realized I was in prison. And it was, here I am, I was 17 years old. I haven't turned 18 yet, man. Mm. I'm facing a 5-year to life sentence.
So your first day on the yard, how'd that go?
First day on the yard, man, I didn't really know anybody. So, I met some guys and what have you, but I basically stayed by myself. I just stayed by myself. Within 90 days, they moved me next door. I was put on the main line, and I remember the first day going to the chow hall, riot broke out. Mm. And I remember standing up there going, this is insanity. I have 5 years or the rest of my life of this. This is crazy. I'm standing in line, getting ready to get my food. And the two ethnic groups, they just start fighting, man. They start stabbing each other. It's like, it was wild. It was crazy. It was insanity.
And were they trying to recruit you when you were there?
Yeah, you know what's really crazy? One of the guys asked me to be a part of a gang, and I'd been a leader. So I said, yeah, I'll be a part of the gang. Can I lead it? And the guy looked at me like, he knew then, brother. I didn't know what time it was. Right. And so, but I learned you got to hang out with somebody. You don't make it through prison just being a loner. So there were these guys, San Diego, Ronald, Donald Pogue, and there were some others, man, Punchy and Winston, Dirty Red out of San. We just all became my friends, and especially Ronald and Donald. They were just two incredible young men. They'd done a lot of prison time. They had a brother named Michael, and they said, you remind us of our brother Michael, and we're going to look out for you. And I said, man, I don't need nobody looking out for me, because I didn't know what was in their minds.
Right.
And they looked at me and said, we know what you're thinking. We came in when we were 16. I said, but that's when we talked. We're going to look out. And they did. They really.
And how old were they at that time when they were talking?
When I met them, they were probably about 23. They're in their 20s. They did about 15 years, 13, 14, 15 years.
Are you in touch with them now?
No, I think one of them is deceased. When I got out years later, I was. And one of them, when he was getting ready to get out, because I even got out before they did, got him some clothes and some other stuff. But after I said that prayer that night in the prison yard, my life began to change. I began to read this Bible, began to study.
So how many years was that when you had that prayer in the prison yard?
I was in prison. I'd been in prison about 18 months.
Okay. And so right after that prayer, did you feel something?
No,
or just a peace? Or
I did. From that night to this night, I've never had that nightmare again. I've never had it again. Mm-hmm. But I had peace. I had peace. Yes, I did.
Now, when you say you didn't have peace, you said there was just an unrest going on. What's going on with you? I mean, describe that when you say you didn't have a peace. Was it a
lay down at night?
Like you wasn't right with God?
I wasn't right with myself. So definitely I wouldn't. I wasn't right with anybody. I wasn't right with myself, with God, anybody around me, man. So and it was like demons, and I really think it was. Man, there was craziness going. I would look at people and see them without their heads, and and for 18 months, I used to dream about how I was going to get even with this guy who turned state evidence. It wasn't about, Sam, you were involved in this crime and it's your fault. It was about, I'm going to get even with this dude, man. He shouldn't have said nothing. Code on the street is you get caught, you don't say nothing, and I'm going to get even with him. Mm-hmm. And,
So you see some supernatural things, you know, in kind of in the demonic realm.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was. I mean, I had no idea what it was, but it was weird. I mean, I saw stuff, heard stuff, couldn't sleep at night, wake up rustling, tossing and turning, screaming, yelling. You know, guys would say, "Hey,
Did you feel entities? Did you feel entities in the room sometimes?
No, man. I don't really know. I just know that it was just a combination of stuff.
Right.
You know, it was like stuff trying to get out of me.
Yeah, just
that's a good word. I was tormented on the inside of me. You know, when you let down people who believe in you, man, that's torment in and of itself.
Right.
And the community I went to and I lived in, my family, parents, and yeah, I was crazy, and everybody knew I was crazy, gun packing fool, and all the rest. But there was still always somebody who believed in me. My dad always believed in me, and there's always a few other folks that always believed in me. And I just feel bad because I let all these people down. My school, man, I let everybody down, man.
So take us back to that yard. So the day after, or after you said that prayer, how did things change from that point?
Well, first of all, I started reading the Bible. I just started reading the Bible. And you know what the interesting thing about reading the Bible? I didn't ask God because I had a very bad mouth and I had a worse temper. And all the stuff I was involved in prison, it don't matter. But I was involved in crazy stuff. It's really a miracle I got out alive. But the more I read the Bible, something started happening to me on the inside. My vocabulary began to change. I didn't say, God help me not to talk a certain way. They said, when you pray, talk to God the way you talk to everybody else. So I just talk to God the way I talk to everybody else. And I use the language that I normally use when I talk to everybody else. But I kept reading the Bible. And I go, man, this is interesting, man. This is, it was like God knew I was reaching out to him. So he was reaching out to me. And things just started making sense. I got to John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believes in him would not perish but have everlasting life. And I began to realize that I'm part of the world. God really loved me. And if God loved me, who am I not to love myself? And then something else strategic happened. One day, someone, you can tell, brother, I've used this Bible a lot. But one day they said some professional athletes were coming to the prison. And I said, man, shut up. There's nobody coming to this prison unless they've been sent here by a judge. When in actuality, Fred Biletnikoff and Ben Davidson, they both came to visit the prison. And I remember...
Now, who were they?
They both used to play for the Oakland Raiders. Earlier this year, Ben Davidson died, and I've had an opportunity to thank both of them for that day. And I told them, this happened so many years ago. You've done so many wonderful things. I'm sure that you won't remember, but it was a day I'll never forget. And I shared with them how they, in different settings, in different years, they came to this prison. I don't know what they said. I just remember that Ben Davidson was the biggest human being I'd ever seen in my life. And there was some things about Fred I'll never forget as well. And but I remember going back to my cell that night.
Yeah, so they were on the yard, or
we had a big gym down in. No, it wasn't no chapel service, brother. No. Not with Ben Davidson and Fred Biletnikoff. No, it wasn't church, but they just came, and the fact that they came to the prison, it spoke volumes to me. And what it said to me was this: I must have worth. I must have value. 2 Oakland Raider players came to see me. I must have worth. I must have value. And that was the genesis of my journey of change. Those 2 guys coming. It wasn't an encounter with God. And this happened before my encounter with God on the prison yard. Right. It was like, if these guys believe in me, they're total straight. I took it personal. Right. I didn't just sit there thinking, oh, they're talking. No. I felt like they were talking to me. And whatever they were saying, it was coming to me. And they were saying to me, Sam, you have worth. Sam, you have value. It's not over. There's no fat lady. She can't sing. Your life can just begin. You can do something with your life. And I went back to my prison cell saying, you know what? I need change, man. I ain't living like this. I'm not spending my life like this, like an animal in a cage and what have you. I'm not living like this. And so I started looking for ways to change. I started going to school. I finished high school in prison. They said I needed to go to AA. The proverbial they. And so I went to AA. And I'd never been to AA, so I saw the program worked. Everybody stood up sooner or later and said, hi, my name is Sam, and I'm an alcoholic. I said, I ain't into this crap. I left, man. I said, I ain't standing up in front of a bunch of strangers and say I'm an alcoholic. So I went to NA, Narcotics Anonymous. Well, I didn't know what that was like. It was the same thing. And guy stood up and said, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I'm a drug addict. And I'm thinking, you ought to get together with the wino and AA. Y'all can go out in the prison yard and tell each other your problems, Then I got involved with the Muslims. you know, and then I went to church.
Now, how'd that go when you got?
Well, you know
the
what?
Muslims?
You know what really was funny was at that time, it was all about the white man. It was his fault and all the rest. Well, even I, as crazed and as insane as I was, realizing there wasn't no white man. My parents aren't white.
Right.
My parents are black. So even then, I knew that they weren't my problem. You know, but I kept going all the rest. You know, but after a while, I thought, man, I'm not into this either. And I went there for a while.
It wasn't giving you that peace.
It wasn't. I was looking for peace.
Right.
You know, if I thought the white Aryan brothers would give me some peace, I'd have joined them. I wanted peace. I didn't care how I got it,
Right.
brother, or you know the one of the Mexican gangs. I just needed some peace on the inside. I knew I couldn't continue living like this. I couldn't sleep at night, man. I was crazy. And I went to church, and some guy stood up and said, you know, I'm a sinner. I need Jesus. I'm going, man, why has everybody got to admit they got a problem? And then I realized, it took me about 18 months to realize that in order to get help, you have to first admit you have a problem. Well, I didn't think I had a problem. I was in prison. They came out of prison, problem solved. But I did have some problems.
So what shined the light on those problems that made you come to a point to where, you know, you were thinking about repenting?
I went back to AA. I went back to NA. I went back to church. And those, you know, a lot of people, oh, they're just self-help groups. Yeah, and I needed a lot of self-help. Christ gave me the power that I needed. AA and NA gave me the principles that I needed. So as I encompassed these principles, the power from Christ helped me to live out these principles.
Knowledge and wisdom.
Oh, brother. You know, one time a guy gave me a book to read. Came by my cell. He gave me I said, what's it about? He said, it's about God, man. I said, really? I was about 19, 18, I don't remember. He says, hey, I'm going to give it to you to read. I said, all right, man. And I remember I took it, Ray, and I put it on my locker. And as he was leaving, he turned to me and he looked. He said, now remember, once you read that book, you're accountable and responsible for what you read. I said, yeah, all right, man, I hear you. Ray, that guy came back about a week later. He says, man, did you read the book? I said, no, man, it's right to where I put it. He said, why didn't you read it? And with all the stupidity I could muster, I said these words, because I don't want to be accountable and I don't want to be responsible.
Yeah, that's honesty.
That's stupidity.
Stupidity
and you know. And I wasn't ready for any of that stuff, man. So he took his book and he said, man, I feel sorry for you. And he walked away. And so, and I met a lot of people like that. I wasn't the only one, you know. And so, I just survived. I survived. I was just a few days shy of 5 years, man, in the penitentiary and got out. And that's when my real challenge began. How do you survive on the outside?
Right.
You know, you live.
So what was that day like? You know, what was a week like before you're about to get released? What was going on?
Well, there was all kind of guys coming at me, trying to get me to get in trouble so I wouldn't go home. It's amazing, brother.
So how'd you avoid that?
You know what? I had some friends who looked out for me, but I also, by that time, guys, you know, they said, you know what? We just need to leave him alone. But up until the night that I was getting out of prison, the guys, they just play those stupid games.
Right.
You know, get into a fight. Well, now they take your date, you know, do something stupid, plant something on you and all the rest. And really, by this time, I'd become a pretty strong man of faith. And I just kept saying, God, you got to help me. You got to help me. One guy, I mean, it was just crazy stuff. But I just made it through the night. Next day, I walked out, and my dad and my brother were out there waiting on me. And even some of the guards came out to another gate, and they met me out front because my father came to visit me so much. And I think the tragedy of a lot of, especially young men in prison, is that we dads, man, we father these kids. And I fathered a kid when I was 16 years old. He's doing great now, but, you know, he had to overcome his anger with me. And you know what he told me, Ray? He said, when he was about 13, 14 years of age, he said, I asked him, why did you change? He said, because I realized I was making the same stupid choices that you were making. He goes, I realized I was allowing the pain you inflicted upon me to control my life. And he says, I realized I was headed down the same path, and I don't want to go down that path. And so, you know, there'll probably be some young kid or somebody watching this, and they're you know, daddy wasn't there, daddy got mama pregnant, daddy left. Maybe they don't even know who their daddy is. Maybe daddy's dead. But you know what? There's a lot of things we fathers do to our young sons, and sometimes we don't even know the damage we've done to them, Ray. But you know what? My son had to make his own choices. So we're back to that word I said at the beginning, choices. And at 13 years of age, and he was raised, I mean, brother, in the ghetto of Oakland. I mean, he used to run with some guys, you know, Felix Mitchell's nephew, little Daryl, I think his name was. That was my son's best friend. And And he became infamous, and I think he's still incarcerated. And I think that was my son's best friend. And I'd probably seen him when I went to go pick up my son, but I didn't know who he was. Mm-hmm. And eventually he came and he moved in with us and stayed with us. But he made his own choices. So even though life is crazy, mom ain't there, dad ain't there, you're staying in, but it's full of choices. And God has given us enough power on the inside to make right choices if we choose to.
So you're getting out of prison. Now you still, like you say, you still have that coldness. Now, did Christ take that coldness away that you had towards your mom?
Yeah, well, that took
yeah,
that's a journey.
And what happened with that relationship?
Well, it got better when I got married. I got out. I was out about 90 days, and I got married. And I was not a nice,
And did you meet your wife while you were incarcerated?
No, I didn't know my wife. She didn't know me. My wife was a good girl. I jokingly tell her, I don't know what you did wrong as a little girl, but it was something bad to end up with me. You should have repented, and God would have let you marry, whatever. But anyway, but I realized that I was angry. And my wife used to tell me not long after we were married, you need to get some help. What do you mean help? Oh, you think I need to go see a counselor? So you think I'm crazy, don't you? Mm-hmm. She goes, I didn't say that, honey. No, you think I'm crazy, don't you? Well, I didn't say that. Oh, I ain't going to see no counselor. I ain't crazy. And so this went on for maybe a couple of years. And finally one morning I woke up and she was gone with my kids. Mm. And I remember thinking, oh, she meant change. She meant she wasn't going to put up with this craziness. Mm-hmm. And I did. I went to go call up a counselor. I said, I'm not coming to your office because if anybody sees me coming to your office, they'll think I'm crazy. And I ain't crazy. I said, however, I will meet you around the corner from your office in the park. Ray, I was so concerned about people seeing me and going into this counselor's office thinking I was crazy that it never dawned on me what they must have thought when they drove by the park and saw this white guy and this black guy in a swing, both of us in two different swings talking. But they didn't think I was crazy, bro, okay? I didn't care what else they thought. They didn't think I was crazy. And at one point, I just had to go talk to my mother. And my dad had prepared me for that day. And I just had to get rid of this anger. And so I went to tell my mother off. What ended up coming out was, Mom, please forgive me. Mm. She said, forgive you for what? I said, I should have been a better son. I made your grandmother wait too soon. And I just started going through, I don't know where it came from, because I'd driven 2 hours, brother, to let all this poison out of me. Well, the poison did come out, but it just came out in a healthy manner.
Came out in love. Huh?
And instead of because I began to realize if God could love me with all the junk that I had done, the least I could do is give that love to my mother. And I began to cry. She held me in her arms and I cried. And I was uncomfortable because, my dad could hug me and that was fine. But mama hugging me, man, we didn't have that kind of, wasn't that kind of a party, okay? But through the years, we've become very, very, very close. There's been a lot of healing between my mother and I. And when my stepfather died, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I went down, stayed with my mom, and helped her to take care of all of her business. And I remember she looked at me, she says, you really love me, don't you? I said, I do, Mama. But God had really done some healing in my life. What I realized, Ray, was when I was a kid, I was hurt. There's not a man, woman, boy, or girl in juvenile, prison, whatever, that hasn't been hurt. And now in order to get to those facilities, we've had to hurt a lot of other people. If I had dealt with my hurt over here, I would have never ended up over here. Mm. And then, I got out of prison and I needed a job. So I wanted to go to college. I didn't want to go to college to be anything except get a good education so I can get a good job. Very few people wanted to hire somebody who could sell drugs, who could rob, who could steal, who could make babies. I needed an education. So I went to college, graduated with a bachelor's degree. And you know what? Every class that I took, I realized it was, man, I felt good. It did something inside of me. So I took another class. In fact, someone asked me one day.
Why did it make you feel so good?
Because all of a sudden, man, I felt valued. I felt like I was doing something to help me and to help other people in the future and what have you. I realized my wife was smiling at me. My parents were smiling. My cousins and different people were proud of me, man, because, man, look at Sammy. He's going to college. And I like that. I like people looking up to me rather than looking down to me. Mm. And someone asked me once, man, how did you do 5 years in prison? I said, day at a time. And they said, well, how did you? And then someone else asked me another time, how did you end up graduating from college? I said, class at a time. Mm. So it all happens one day at a time, one step at a time. It happens with choices. That's what got me where I was at. Then I left there. And
you said the word of God helped you to make the right choices.
Well,
Taught you wisdom.
without the word, without the word of God, the word of God changed my mind. My mind was mush. Ray, I had drunk and utilized so much alcohol, so many drugs. My mind was mush. I remember standing on the prison yard looking at guys, listening to them talk. And when they got done, they said, well, what's up, man? Well, what do you think about what we just said? I said, what'd you say? They said, the conversation we just had. And I said, you were talking to me? And they would look at me and say, man, what's wrong with you? And I was gone, man. And I remember that night on the prison yard, I said, God, if you would give me my mind back, I'll never put another drug in there. And I haven't.
So Christ renewed your mind.
He renewed
Well, that's an important
my
point,
mind.
because a lot of times when we go out and we go, doing our counseling into prisons and things like that, some of these young men look discouraged and they're saying, I'm burnt. So I've done too many drugs. So you're saying that there's hope for that type of individual.
This book right here, I began to read this book. I began to ask God to change my life. I began to ask God to give me a new mind, give me a new brain. The Bible says, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The Bible says he'll keep me in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on me because you trust in me. And I begin to memorize scripture. And I'm telling you, Ray, I'm a witness today. I didn't just go to earn a bachelor's, I earned a master's, and eventually I earned a doctorate degree. I've met with the President of the United States. You can do a panoramic view of my office. I now oversee over 460 churches, 170. Some of them report to my office. I travel all over the world. Last year alone, my wife and I spent 6 weeks on a sabbatical. We went to Spain. We spent 3 weeks in Spain. We went down to Costa Rica. We spent 5 weeks in Costa Rica. I've been to the Philippines. I've been all over the world. Literally, I don't know how many different countries in Africa I've been. Turkey, spent 12 days in Turkey, just been all over the world. But it started, right? The most important thing is it started in prison. Because in prison, that's where my change began. And you asked me at the beginning, how did I get in trouble? My son asked me that question one day. I'm going to tell you how I got in trouble. It's because people will say, you don't listen. You don't. No, I did listen. I listened to the older guys who were trying to give me advice, whether it was the school principal, whether it was the dean of students, whether it was my dad, whether it was an uncle, whether it was a cousin. I even had friends who would smoke dope with me and said, man, why do you smoke dope like us? You don't even like it. Man, shut up. Who do you think you're talking to? So I listened to everybody. There's not a human being on this planet they can hear that doesn't listen as intently as everybody. They hear what you're saying. Parents, if a parent sees this, your child hears what you're saying, but here's what we all have in common. And then they just go out and do what they want to do. So
why is it, like you said, our ministries, ThugExposed.Org, we expose the thug culture. What would you say would be the reason why so many of these young people are so attracted to the gangster and the thug culture? Even these young ladies, I get parents asking me, why does my son want to grow up and be a gangster? And why does my daughter want to grow up and marry one?
Because it's perceived acceptance. See, it's a culture. There's a culture. When I was out in that gang world, man, listen, I knew who had my back. And literally, it's sad, but these guys would die for me. And me for them, brother. I mean, it's like, it's something that, it's a family environment that you can't describe any other way except it's just family. And it was odd for me because I had a good family. Grandfather was involved in my life and uncles and cousins. But that gang thing, man, plus it fed something inside. It fed that wild side, man. Man, listen, it fed that wild side of me. It helped me inflict pain on others that I felt like had been inflicted upon me. And so, as I said earlier, I listened to these older guys, and I did what I did. I didn't listen. I listened to two groups of older guys. There was an older group of guys that tried to give me some wisdom and keep me out of trouble. I didn't listen to them. I heard what they said, but this other group I listened to, they said, man, do this, and I did what they did. I ended up in prison. If you look around this office, you'll find that there's a bunch of pictures on my wall. Those were the other older guys that used to speak into my life. I listened to them as well. I did what they told me to do. For instance, when I got to college, I started a semester late, and I had a professor friend, and I told him that I wanted to graduate with the class that I came in late with, which meant I'd have to finish college in 3.5 years. He said, what's your major? I told him my major. He says, come back and see me in 2 or 3 days. I came back. He had taken every class that I needed to take in 3.5 years, Ray. and showed me if I followed this plan that he had laid out, I would graduate in 3.5 years. Now here's a miracle. I did what he told me. Here's the second miracle. What do you think happened in 3.5 years? Isn't that a miracle? I just did with somebody. So what I'm saying is, if the people will tell us and help us, but after a while, people will quit trying to talk to us if they don't think you're listening. And so there came a point where people no longer were trying to give me advice. People were now controlling my life.
So what nugget would you leave with the audience for these young people, you know, that are trying to find their way in this world with all the temptations coming their way? You know, what last piece of advice would you leave for them?
Your life can change the moment you take responsibility for it.
Amen. Dr. Huddleston, show us a little bit about your book.
Well, I've written 2 books. And the first book is a chronicle of my life. It's called 5 Years to Life. And one of the guys who endorsed it said, the story of a wayward son and his father's relentless love. On the back is a picture of my family, man. You know, that's my crew. And I now have 13 grandbabies. And our children, we have 2 sons, and 2 married sons and a daughter. We're all married. And I don't just talk about a bad boy becoming good. My wife says I'm still a bad boy trying to become good. What I talk about are all the people that helped me along the journey. You know, one writer used to say these words: whenever you see a turtle on top of a fence post, you know he had help getting there. I'm a turtle. And I'm sitting awful high on the fence post, and I've had a lot of help getting there.
You know, Dr. Huddleston, I remember hearing about you, and I remember reading your book. And, you know, as you know, I was working at the Department of Corrections. And I remember coming on to my unit. And before I did, I remember I seen you walking off in the distance. And they said you had dropped off a big box of books. And I remember just going through that, and I looked, that book was familiar to me. And I remember that it had a big impact on me. But I remember it was the intake unit. And as these individuals would come in, I'd give them their blanket, their toothbrush, toothpaste, their sheets, and I'd put that book on top. And I kid you not, when I would do my accounts, I would go through the room, and these guys would just be captivated by that book, just deep inside. And I'd ask them, I said, you like that book? How's that book coming? They said, man, this is really good. And I'd start to see the change. And these individuals that were reading your book, I would notice that when the church list would come by, they'd be on that list. But they said that book really inspired them. So that's firsthand information that I could tell you, but that was my regular routine. When somebody would come in the institution, I would take your book and put it right on their blanket, and I would see an impact. You would just see the impact of those that read your book versus those that hadn't.
Well, you know, a guy stopped me in the hallway here in my office earlier this week. His brother works in juvenile hall. He was telling me about a young man in juvenile hall who had read my book and had given his life to Christ. I think the reason that they identify with it is because I'm real.
Right. And that's what honest. They said. That's one thing that they
I don't try to hide punches. I talk about some crazy stuff that happens to guys in juvenile hall, happened to me, and all kind. I'm just real. I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. This is what happened. This is the way it is. And they're reading this book going, yeah, man, he's right.
Right.
You know, the other book I wrote is about I was on a train ride with a guy, and the guy who wrote something on this book is Jerry Manuel. Jerry Manuel was a Major League Manager of the Year. Jerry lives in this area, and him and I are dear friends. But I was on a train with a guy one day, and he asked me, what did I do? We started talking about it, and I just simply said, you know what, I work for an international organization, and we search for lost people. He said, man, what does that mean? I said, well, we just believe that most people in life, or a lot of people in life, have been disconnected. We try to find these people and reconnect them. Some of them have been disconnected from family members because of drugs, alcohol, crime. Some have been disconnected because of whatever. We have programs that we try to put them in to help them. I said, but we realize that the number one disconnect is between them and God. And when they are reconnected to God, the problems don't go away, Ray, but now they have help to deal with the problems. Remember I told you, gave my life to Christ, AA, NA, all the rest, the principles. That's what I was talking about. So I said, I'm going to tell you 5 things, and I guarantee, you guarantee? I said, I guarantee if you do these 5 things, it'll revolutionize your life. It'll change you forever. He goes, what are they? I said, number 1, I said, let's use the acronym BASES, like baseball, BASES. I said, you got to quit blaming everybody else for your problems. I said, number 2, you've got to learn how to accept responsibility for your actions. Number 3, you have to learn how to seek help. Number 4, you have to learn how to envision success. In fact, one old Church of God in Christ preacher, Bishop E. Cleveland, used to say, if you don't see it before you see it, you ain't never going to see it. And guys and girls end up in trouble and all the rest because of what they see. I had to change this picture by reading this book. And then I said, you got to have a step-by-step plan, and it begins today. So anybody's life, Ray, can change. But you've got to take control of your life, and you've got to quit blaming mama, daddy, whoever, snitch. You've got to learn how to accept responsibility. I mean, this is your life. And my life changed. I didn't know if I'd ever get out of prison, Ray, but that's when my life changed. So you got to take control of your life and accept responsibility where you are. Not where you want to be, but where you are. Seeking help. Don't be afraid to start talking to somebody. Even if you're locked up, you know what? Chapel, counsel, somebody. You find somebody to start talking. Find you a new set of friends. You got to learn how to envision success. You know, standing at that free throw line, looking at that basket, and you see the ball going through the net. That's why when you shoot it and you miss, you get all upset because you saw that ball going through, or golfing, or whatever it is, sport that you might play. And you got to learn how to envision success and have a step-by-step plan. That's what I would tell them.
Amen. I think we're going to end on that note. Any other words you'd like to say before we just wrap it up here?
No, except I pray that whoever sees this, God will bless them. If a chaplain sees this, they can use copies of my book. If they'll contact me at samhuddleston.org, we'll do what we can to send them some copies. samhuddleston.org.
Father, we just thank you so much. There's no name above your name. I wouldn't serve any other name. Yeshua, Mashiach.
There's power in the name. There's victory in the name. There's healing in the name.
Healing.
Anointing in the name.
Yes.
There is peace in the name. If you would speak aloud the name, then every knee shall bow before.
Every knee.
Every tongue proclaim. There's power in the name.
Power.
There's victory in the name. There's healing in
So much healing.
anointing in the name.
Yes.
There's peace in the name.
Peace.
If you would speak aloud the name, every knee shall bow.
Every knee.
Every tongue proclaim. Yeshua, Mashiach, Jesus Christ,
Jesus.
the name
That name.
is above all names.
It's above all names.
Let us shout it to every nation.
Every nation.
You're the rock of our salvation.
It's the rock.
Yeshua, we bless your name.
We bless your name. We bless your name.
Yeshua,
Yeshua.
we
We bless your name.
Power
Power.
in the name.
So much.
There's victory in the name.
There's healing in the name of God. Anointing in the name.
There is peace in
Peace in his name.
if you would speak.
If you would speak aloud the name,
Say it loud.
Every
are, but we love you.
Power in the name. Power in the name. Power in the name. Power in the name. There's victory in the name. Victory in the name. Victory in the name. There's victory in the name. There's healing 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 in His name. Anointing in the name. Anointing in the name. Anointing in the name. Anointing in the name. What's His name? Jesus. What's His name? Jesus. What's God's name? Jesus. What's His name?
How you doing? This is Brother Ray with ThugExposed.Org Ministries. Just wanted to share with you what we do at ThugExposed.Org. You know, we do video production. A lot of the videos that you see on YouTube and Facebook of, you know, God's amazing testimonials of His mercy and His grace and His compassion through the individuals that are bold enough to share their testimonies. We also do gang and inmate outreach at the county jail and juvenile hall. We also have a prison outreach ministry, which we send out free books. As you go to ThugExposed.Org, I have 4 books that I've written that we pass out for free. You can even go there now and get free downloads. We appreciate when people buy them because that helps support the ministry. But we buy boxes of these books and we take them to juvenile hall, you know, to the jails, and sometimes we pass them out onto the streets as well. So we do that, but we do a lot of counseling at the jail, guidance sessions, I should say, at the county jail and at juvenile hall, along with prayer sessions. We believe in Mark 16:17 that those who believe would cast out demons. And you'll see some of those testimonials on the website at ThugExposed.Org. But I wanted to share with you that during this time, this is you know, we're asking the individuals to just pray about giving a year-end gift, okay? Because it does cost a lot of money to run the ministry. And right now, we do have a great need. I don't do this often at all, but we do have a great need. The ministry vehicle, 2007 Prius, is down. I have over 400,000 miles on that vehicle, and took it into a shop, and it needs a new engine. Okay, so that I got blessed with a great deal for $1,650. They're gonna install the engine, a used engine, but a good working engine, and a Cadillac converter. Okay, so we're just asking, you know, for those who maybe have never given to the ministry, and we thank you for those who have given and supported the ministry. But we're just asking just to pray and see if God puts on your heart to sow a seed, a tax-deductible seed, before the year ends. You know, of any amount. So, and you know, not only that, but you know, we're asking for people to partner with us because we have, you know, like I said, ongoing expenses with this ministry. I mean, we do printouts of newsletters, but not only do we purchase books, and we don't get any profit when we purchase the book because I purchased the books at cost, okay? And then from there, we just go in, and a lot of times after prayer sessions, or sometimes just walk in randomly at the jail on different floors, and we pass out the books. And you can see the testimonials from those who have read the book. So again, for those that feel led within their heart to give forth a gift, you know, you can go to ThugExposed.Org and click that donation button and make a year-end tax-deductible gift. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me, and I pray that you and your family have a blessed 2018 year. Praise God.